Dr. Thompson, good evening. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for being one of our guests this evening. For the sake of our audience, can you please introduce yourself, your name, and your role?
Okay, I'm Dr. Andrea Thompson. In addition to being a university professor, I am also a curriculum instruction and assessment coordinator for a charter school division. And I've been a school administrator in the K through 12 world, having done so many different things in K through 12. And also, I am also one of the fellows for the National Association of Elementary School Principals, and also one of their mastermind leaders. We do a lot of masterminding with school administrators across the country.
We need it.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you've had several roles over the years, but what got you started in the field of education?
Oh, that is such an interesting. When I started college, my intent was engineering.
Okay.
And I struggled so much in math that I switched over to industrial arts education.
Okay.
And so it puts me, it's industrial arts. So of course I'm still dabbling in all those things I would do in engineering. Yep. But then here it was, I had an opportunity to teach it. And that meant so much to me. I was like, oh my goodness, I just enjoyed the joy that teaching brings. Yeah. So that's how, when I just kept going, I started growing in the different areas. I went over at one point, I was a media specialist and a reading specialist, instructional coach, mentoring new teachers, and it just kept going on and on and on. Yeah. That's where I belong. That's my purpose.
I mean, you speak with such passion and conviction about just the world of education in general. It's very refreshing. What was your, dare I ask, your favorite role you've had so far, and why?
My favorite role has been working with beginning teachers. Okay. I love the induction program. Because to me, it is, I'm bringing somebody in my field. Yeah. I want you to understand if there are landmines, what it is that you can do to stay in this profession. So I'm passing that on. Yeah. Because you either learn from your own experience or from other people's experience. And also to make sure that I have expert teachers in the field, because every child deserves an expert teacher.
Oh, I agree with that. Now, so there's a lot of, in recent years, we've really been examining the best ways to go about professional development for teachers. So you mentioned that you spend a lot of time with teachers who are just starting out in their career. What have you learned about the way adults learn, and how have you shifted the way that you prepare these teachers to meet the demands of the classroom once they step foot in there?
Okay, so here is one of the things that I've learned is that, of course, a school district's HR division is going to do their part. Right. With the induction and bringing them in and all of that. I believe in a continuous induction, not a 1 week, not a one and done. And it is when they get to the actual school building where the rubber hits the road. Yeah. It matters who their school administrators are. Yeah. It is their school administrator who now must help you to grow in this profession, who must help you to learn how to handle the stress that is inherent to this profession. Yeah. And to understand the kind of coaching and support that you need. So, and understand what adult learners need. Yes. It's pretty much like it's an apprenticeship on the job, regardless of what the college tells you. Yes. It's yes. Apprenticeship.
Yes. Student teaching is the prerequisite for the apprenticeship, right? You mentioned, that every teacher deserves and needs an exceptional school administrator. So you do a lot of great work with the NAESP, excuse me. Yes. Can you talk to me a little bit about their work as an organization and what you do with them?
The National Association of Elementary School Principals is one of the greatest organizations I've ever had the joy of working with. They they are always reinventing themselves. They send out surveys. They believe in continuous improvement. They're always paying attention to what's going on out there with school leaders. They're interested in the school leadership pipeline. Yeah. They focus a lot on new administrators, aspiring leaders. I mean, they've even looked to see what it is that we can do for women in leadership, yes, which is where I became involved with them. And they have so many strands and aspects to them, but they cover the entire gamut of what it takes to build super leaders.
Yes. So we've as a nation, and I would argue a bit late, because this always was important about, you mentioned, the recruitment, intentional recruitment of leaders of color. And how have you seen the efforts change over time to make sure that there are more leaders of color in seats at the highest ranking, whether it be in a building or in a district?
Well, sometimes it has to do with the school district, because there are school districts. For example, one of them I used to work with in Maryland, they, it's largely African-American. And you have a lot of African-Americans, there, and other, they become more diverse.
Right.
Then there are school districts where the student population and demographic is changing, but then when you look at the top, that's not changing along with it.
Yes.
And it tells me that there is a problem with diversity, inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it has to do with an organization being culturally proficient.
Yes.
So if the organization takes it upon itself to become culturally proficient, it is going to look at its hiring practices. It is going to look at the actual demographics, and they're going to strive for balance. They're going to want more inclusivity at every level, right. Every level. Yeah. So it depends on how culturally proficient the organization or the school district is.
How does one become more culturally proficient?
Well, one of the things you have to do is look at the cultural proficient continuum, where at the very end you have, on the left, you have cultural destructiveness, all the way to cultural proficiency. So so then you move into cultural incapacity, where everyone is able to pay attention to everyone's needs. Hopefully that is where, you pay attention to that part. If you're culturally incapable, it means you're at the incapacity stage.
Okay.
All right. And then you have cultural blindness, where it is, no, we don't see color. We don't see color. We don't see differences now. But inherent in that is, we don't see that because we have one that's working for us. And so we have no time for those differences. So the cultural blindness, but then along comes cultural pre-competence, when you start becoming aware and say, we really need to stop and take a look at the way we do things.
Yes.
The way we do things. And it just takes off from there as they grow and they learn and they listen to different perspectives. It's not just about color. It's not just about race.
Yes.
It's about even the sexuality and the different intersectionalities that everybody undergoes. Yeah. I mean, they'll look at me, a Black woman, Caribbean background, basically raised in the US, yes. And I have all these intersectionalities. I'm a woman, and so on. So it's about acknowledging, respecting diversity. And I always say, diversity is, the famous quote, diversity is inviting me to the dance.
Yes.
Inclusion is asking me to dance.
Yes.
So inviting people, hiring a lot of African Americans or different races and so on, and a diverse group at the top, that's just the beginning.
Yes.
That could be a pretty picture,
Yeah.
but are they really included in decision making?
Yes.
That's inclusivity.
Yeah, and that's such a beautiful answer. Complex, but also very simple at the same time. And I imagine it does take first a commitment to being able to do that for the work to begin, right? It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it is a daily commitment that all leaders, and whether in a building or at a district, need to walk in order to make this a reality. So thank you very much. One group that we often leave last, but we shouldn't, are parents. And I know that you're passionate about supporting parents and helping their children at home. Can you talk to me a little bit about your Parents as Tutors program?
Oh, yes. You know, when I was a reading specialist, matter of fact, even when I was in the classroom, an instructional coach and so on, it would break my heart when I would see parents come in tears saying, I really, really want to help my child. I don't know what to do. Because even though they've gone through education themselves,
Yes,
it was with a different lens. I learned to read because I was being taught how to read, but I do not know how to teach somebody how to read. So I do not understand when you say that my child is having difficulties with phonemic awareness. What's that? Phonics, fluency. I buy books for my child, but okay, your child is in third grade. Those are kindergarten level books. How would they know that? So I'm very passionate about including parents, building their capacity around helping to collaborate with teachers, understanding the language that teachers use, the education language, especially if your child is in special education.
yes,
Turning up to these meetings, being an advocate, understanding what they say when they say your child has a learning disability. So I believe that, and that's why I developed the Parents as Tutors company, because I had to be intentional around teaching them. And that's why I wrote the entire course and I have all the books on the website for them. And many have reached out to me. So it's working.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can say that as a parent of a child with special needs, it is very important to understand the language. While I have the added benefit of being an educator myself, there's so many parents that just don't know where to start and don't know how to fully unpack what all of it means, and knowing that every child is different. And so, you know, what student A may need and what student B needs, right, are different. And if you're a parent with multiple children, you have multiple learning needs, right? And so you need to be able to know how to fluidly move between each. And so that's very important. You mentioned teaching, which I want to get to next. So I know that you teach at the university level and you support folks who are working on their doctorates. What is that like? And what are some of the trends you are seeing with folks who are going to be leading our nation's schools?
Well, it's been 20 years for me, a little more than 20 years for me at the higher education level, because I've always had two jobs. I don't even know what it is to have one job, but so I always had them going side by side. And interestingly, because I was in K through 12, I still am, but because then I was able to bring that perspective to what I was doing at the higher education level. I knew what was important for school leaders to understand. I knew what it took to evaluate programs and understand assessments and understand the value of qualitative research and not just looking at the numbers.
Yes.
So I do teach the research courses and I teach a lot of the leadership courses and even the HR courses for educators. So I know the importance of school leaders even understanding human resource and understanding all the HR functions. I knew that our school leaders needed to know how to operationalize the PSEL standards, not just the theory. So what that did for me was help me to develop assignments and activities in courses that were applicable to what was actually going on in K through 12. And for those who wanted to stay at the higher education division, that was okay also, because I'm also in that division. So I also know what it is that they would need. Also, for them to understand that although we are focusing on andragogy and we're saying they're adults, but we need to understand that a lot of adults did not leave K through 12 with their IEPs now. They're now in higher education with the same needs.
Right.
So I know we needed to pay attention to that, and we still need to differentiate in the higher education program.
Yeah. Yeah, you made a reference when we're talking about teachers about the real work begins when you're in the school, and I think so often our leadership programs, while they differ from university to university, it is a lot of theory, and then you go into schools and the work begins. And so it's great to hear that you've been able to strike the balance between theory and practical application, because that's what they're going to need to be able to lead schools effectively. Now, you mentioned being able, but you also teach across different components that a leader is going to need to master in order to be successful. So now during the age of COVID, and we've seen massive disruption in the ways in which leaders are able to lead their schools effectively, what advice would you give to a veteran leader who has not had to experience this level of disruption at this level before, and also a leader who's just emerging in their career and starting out the leadership during this time?
I like that question, because pivot, that's the word. I've often said to educators, you've got to be flexible in your approach. You've got to be flexible. We're educating our children to be flexible out there in the world, to respond to change. And if there ever was a time when we had to show how to maintain continuity and stability while we are changing, COVID did that for us.
Times now.
So I would say to the veteran, we did it. Look at what we did. We have often said that educators are the people who know how to pivot. So I would say to those who've gone on from the profession, applaud us, because we demonstrated what it is that you have been saying, that we could lift this organization and put it online in 1 week, take it back off. And then here it is. We're settled and we think it's okay, then bam, we got to go up again.
Right back.
The flexibility, we know how to handle stress and so on. The new person coming in, wow, this is a great time for you to come in, because if you can manage this change and instability and create continuity of learning in this, that means that you are going to survive anything else that comes. And this too shall pass.
Yes, that is a very optimistic approach, which is necessary because people feel defeated at times, right? You have massive teacher shortages, people are stressed, you have leaders covering classes, they're not really able to effectively lead their buildings the way they want to. And so, knowing that this too, as you mentioned, shall pass, but also what incredible lessons can be learned now that will last them their entire careers. My last question for you is more of an abstract question, but what does it mean to be educated?
What does it mean to be educated?
Yes.
To be educated means that you have been taught how to link experience, understand your lived experiences, apply your learning from that to your current situation and any other situation that will come up. So yes, we do the book knowledge, but then we have to look back at our background knowledge and tie it into what we're currently experiencing in preparation for what is coming. So it is the past, the present, and preparing for the future.
Very well said. Dr. Thompson, thank you so much for your time this evening. If folks wanted to find you after the interview, where can they find you?
Oh my goodness. Well, parentestudents.com, but Dr. Thompson Andrea at gmail.com.
Wonderful.
That is one of the quickest ways.
Wonderful. Thank you again. I do appreciate your time.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.